Hello everybody and welcome to Bright Weird. Interesting subject this one that serves as an addendum to one of my previous videos. For in this video we ask one simple question. Where is the Emerald Tablet? In my previous video about the Emerald Tablet, we left off that part which discusses the location of the physical artifact. It now only remains to consider the question, where is the original Emerald Tablet? The words that were written on the tablet are generally attributed to the legendary Hermes Trismegistus, a well-known figure to occultists and to those who have studied the ancient Egyptian mysteries. But was there a physical single artifact on which the words were inscribed? And if there was, where did it come from? There seem to be many sources for the origin of the artifact, and more than one design for its appearance. Regarding design, there are two that are generally considered. There's this one here, which is an imaginative 17th century depiction of the Emerald Tablet from the work of Heinrich Conrath in 1606. And then there is, of course, the green Emerald Tablet design shown here, which I'm sure that you're all familiar with. The green tablet design seems to be the most agreed upon and most common. One story claims that the tablet itself was found in Tyana, an ancient city in the Anatolian region of modern-day Turkey. It was supposedly discovered in a caved tomb under the statue of Hermes, clutched in the hands of the corpse of Hermes Trismegistus himself. Incidentally, and as a side note, Tyana is the very same city where Apollonius of Tyana, a Greek Neo-Pythagorean philosopher, was said to have practiced. I don't know if a physical artifact exists in the Vatican or some prized occult collection, and if it does, it's likely a trap for the profane or ego. You see, the medium that the words were inscribed into does not really matter because the real magic lies in the words themselves, an entire encyclopedia of alchemy in a single passage, the perfect example of ancient data compression. Let's consider for a moment that there is and was no physical artifact. And if there was, it was no more important to this story than a piece of paper would be to the Bible. To understand where the Emerald Tablet might exist, you need to consider something called hyperspace, the dimensions above the first 4 dimensions of space-time. Before I take you into hyperspace, I should first recap on the first 4 dimensions. Most people understand the first 4 dimensions, known as space-time, and what it means is 3 dimensions of space and 1 dimension of time. And those dimensions are up, down, forward, back, left and right, and time. Or the first dimension, a static interval or a single point. The second dimension, a static square, known as 2D or two-dimensional, the flatland of the Matchstick Man. The third dimension, or 3D, is the static cube. This dimension adds up and down to left and right and forward and back, 3-dimensional space. And the fourth dimension is a moving cube, also known as a tesseract. The fourth dimension is time, its entropy, its cause and effect. Time is that thing that makes a static 3-dimensional space into a moving reality that we can experience. Time is a dimension and has little to do with clocks. So the first 4 dimensions of space-time are up, down, left, right, forward and back, and the ability to experience time. But what of the higher dimensions beyond space-time? The 5th, the 6th, 7th, 8th, 9th, and 10th dimensions. Well, these are known as hyperspace, the dimensions above what the human being can generally understand, feel, or sense. These elusive places cannot be experienced in the same way that we perceive the four-dimensional space-time that's all around us. Hyperspace can be accessed by humans without the need for silly technology as shown in the movies. The ability to access higher dimensions is built into all of us. And the secrets of how to do so are buried in the age-old teachings of the occult sciences, ways, and arts, which our ancient ancestors were very, very knowledgeable of. So, how do we experience hyperspace, directions or tangents that you cannot point to? How do we experience the fifth, the sixth, seventh, eighth, ninth, and 10th dimensions? How do we do that? Well, first of all, as an experiment, I'd ask you to do the following things. Simultaneously point up and down. Now I'd like you to point left and right. And now I'd like you to point forwards and backwards. You've just pointed into the first three dimensions. You've expressed the three-dimensional space around you. And now I'm going to ask you to point into the fourth dimension. Point into the direction of time. Don't think about clocks. It's got little to do with clocks. Point into the direction of time. You'll find that you cannot do this. This is very difficult as the dimension of time is not quantifiable in the three-dimensional sense. It is a tangent that you cannot point to, but it is the very fact that you are able to point into the first three dimensions that expresses the nature of time. For without time, you would exist in a static and unmoving space. Time gives life. Time is entropy. Time is cause and effect. You cannot point into the direction of time with your fingers. You have to imagine its nature with your mind. Now, after getting your three-dimensional orientated head wound around the fourth dimension, it's time to move into hyperspace. In the same manner that you cannot point into the fourth dimension, you cannot point into the fifth, sixth, seventh, eighth, and ninth, and 10th dimensions either. This is a problem that thankfully the wise sages of old that have gone before us have rendered. It's best to start by considering that higher dimensions are actually levels of consciousness. They are so much more than this, but that would be the best way for a layman to visualize their divine nature. Our waking selves are tuned to the first four dimensions of space-time, and you need to adjust your tuning to be able to visualize and access those higher channels, those higher dimensions or levels of consciousness. Hyperspace is not a place where the Millennium Falcon travels. It's a place where your mind can travel. And this is the secret known by all occultists and all ancient sciences. That might seem like a crazy leap of faith, especially to the profane, but it's a fact and one realized by all those who study the ancient arts. Higher levels of consciousness are higher dimensions of reality. But I digress somewhat from the very point of this video, that being, where is the Emerald Tablet? Consider the possibility that the Emerald Tablet does not exist in the lower dimensions of space-time, but rather in hyperspace, in a timeless higher dimensional state of consciousness. And in this state it would be tiled from the grubby hands of the profane, while remaining accessible to all those who study the text and understand portals to higher dimensional states. According to string theory, there are 10 dimensions, and in the Theosophical Kabbalah of the Hebrews, there are 10 Sephiroth. I like to visualize that both of these systems portray the same natural concept to different contextual audiences. They are both attempting to portray the world that is all around us. And it is true without lying that when you study the words of the Emerald Tablet, you are drawn into a contemplative level of consciousness beyond space-time. The words rip open a portal to higher dimensions of consciousness. They adjust your tuning, and they allow you to step into a magical plane of existence beyond. And in this place, living things become symbols, and symbols become living things. As you read the words of the tablet, you bring it alive by igniting it like a talisman with the fourth dimension of time, as those once static words begin to dance in your mind. Learning those words literally opens a portal to a higher dimension. So if the Emerald Tablet exists in hyperspace, let's go one step further with a second question. In which higher dimension or emanation does it exist? To consider a possible answer to this question took some effort on my part, and I made the mistake of asking this question as I was falling asleep, and this resulted in me being held against my will on the knife edge between awake and asleep for several painful hours until an answer came to me. And that answer was that the Emerald Tablet resides in your heart, the center, the sixth dimension, which is also known as Tiferet, or the sixth Sephiroth of the Theosophical Kabbalah of the Hebrews, also known as the monad, or the sun. And the text of the Emerald Tablet tells you at the very end exactly where it's hidden with these words: that which I have stated of the operation of the sun is accomplished and ended. Tifereth, or the sun, the sixth Sephiroth of the Theosophical Kabbalah of the Hebrews, is an important junction. It literally sits in the center. Opening a portal to this place is ideal for travel to higher dimensional states. 6 is represented by the six-pointed hexagram, or ether, which means quintessence. The hexagram is made from two opposing equilateral triangles, also known as sacred deltas. And when line drawn, the hexagram contains the four alchemical symbols of earth, air, fire, and water. And as the very subject of the Emerald Tablet is alchemy, it seems like a good place for me to leave off. So, to summarize, if you want to travel into higher dimensions, switch off Disney Plus and learn the words of the Emerald Tablet until you can recite them with your eyes closed. And as you do so, be lifted by their divine alchemical magic.